If you're privy to the vintage automotive world and that of a car collector, or someone who really loves a specific vehicle, you'll understand there are certain cars truly worth the effort of a hunt or a search to find an original example. Maybe the car was produced on a more limited run, maybe it won important races, maybe it featured revolutionary designs or driving characteristics. Whatever the case may be, not every car becomes a collectible classic. For that matter, not every collectible classic is equal either. One such car that does fall into the collectible classic category is the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing. These cars are the top dog for 50s and 60s Mercedes, and when kept in original condition, can be worth millions of dollars. It's a car that warrants a focus on preservation over restoration. Due to the skills, knowledge, and connections it takes to not only find these vehicles in original condition, but to preserve that as-built condition and return the vehicle to a mechanically sound state, there's only a handful of people who can do it. That kind of work is exactly what Randy Elber does at his shop, R&R Automotive Restorations, in Mount Kisco, New York. The shop recently finished up work on a rare 1955 300 SL Gullwing that was more than 3 years in the making. It's our Engine of the Week.
Engine Builder's Engine of the Week is sponsored by Pengrade. Precision, performance, Pengrade. Always the original green oil. Elring DOS Original. Leading technology, leading service. And Scat Crankshafts. Everything for your LS engine.
Hey everyone, I'm Greg Jones for Engine Builder, and today we're talking about an ultra-rare 1955 300 SL Gullwing Mercedes, which features a 3-liter straight-six engine. Acquiring a 300 SL Gullwing was a bucket list item for a good client of R&R Automotive Restorations, and he was looking for something that was in original condition. According to Randy Elber, it's the equivalent of finding a needle in a haystack, and the needle doesn't exist.
You know, we passed on arguably, well, I'm going to guess somewhere around 20 or 25 cars. You know, and I just had feelers out, you know, everywhere with everybody, you know, attempting to find, you know, anything that, you know, and we were going to make concessions, you know, a car that had been repainted or, you know, just needed an interior or something that just didn't, you know, hadn't been through a full restoration. And then just out of the blue, there's a kind of a car hunter broker that's in the New York area that I've been in contact with for the last year and a half. And he had gotten a phone call about, you know, one that sort of like sounded like it fit the bill. So he had seen it briefly, you know, put something together and then had transported it back to he's got a storage facility in Connecticut. And I actually met the car there off the trailer. It turns out it's a 2-owner from new, 19,000 original mile, completely unmolested 300 SL. And just, it had been repainted once, but in the late 50s, when it was 2 or 3 years old. And it's been sitting for somewhere around 30 or 35 years. I mean, it was disgusting. It was moldy interior. There was a giant mouse house, you know, inside the car and in the trunk area. But, you know, within 10 minutes into the inspection, you know, you're looking at, you know, the original spare is still mounted on in the rear. You know, it's complete. You know, these cars are documented from the factory with, you know, all their specific stampings for front suspension components and engine and transmission and differential, and all these things all are stamped individually to each car. And all of that was correct and matched. And it was just sort of unbelievable in the respect that, you know, you would think they're all kind of found at this point, and it wasn't. So we were able to acquire it, and under the exact same, you know, premise that the car was completely original interior, original floor mats, you know, deteriorated and stained and things like that. But it was just, you know, really every single component of the car was just in, you know, original condition.
From Randy's first conversations about what his customer wanted to ultimately finding this 300 SL Gullwing was almost 2 years, which for what the customer wanted was a short amount of time. Once the Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing was back at R&R, the physical preservation work began, which is oftentimes 50% more work than a regular restoration because of how delicately you're trying to salvage everything. The engine in the 1955 300 SL is a 3-liter straight-six engine. Randy got to work disassembling the engine and found that basically everything rubber was either petrified or had fallen off during storage. The engine has a cast iron block, a 7 main bearing crank, aluminum head, and front timing chain. It's a very durable motor. The unique parts are obviously the fuel injection, but then also the aluminum head. Those components from this age pose the biggest problem if they're not really well taken care of, or they sit for long periods of time and people haven't changed coolant or run the car intermittently.
Thankfully, they had failed coolant hose low in the motor actually drained the coolant out of the motor, which is probably the best thing that could have happened to it. It didn't physically turn over, but that was just related to 2 piston rings that were stuck, in the bore from just kind of normal surface corrosion, really nothing that kind of, wasn't the norm, but it was just an old, tired motor. Nobody had been through it before, so all the, connecting rods, main bearings, all that stuff was standard. Pistons were standard. Disassembled the motor, took it out. Happy to see that all the coolant had drained out of it, which was great. The oil was probably older than myself. Really nothing scary, just the staining and things like that. So, the block, the cylinder head, the crankshaft, the connecting rods, oil pan, engine side covers, injection pump, all that stuff, we're able to, save and keep and maintain. That's all huge components to the motor. And really just was, somewhat of a standard rebuild where, we did wrist pin bushings, we did new pistons aboard the cylinders, polished the crank and the big ends of the rods, and, new bearings. Same thing with the head. We did new valves, new guides, new valve seals, new, valve springs. They were all, the ones that had sit and closed had collapsed. Timing chain, guides, obviously all the gaskets, water pump, front drives, all your fan assembly and all that stuff was just kind of bearings and seals and sort of the normal, the normal stuff. There really wasn't anything that was, kind of out of the normal for like a, quote unquote normal, normal engine build.
According to Randy, these cars have a great part support via Mercedes, so R&R was able to get original Mercedes car parts manufactured by the same suppliers they used in the 50s. All the internal engine parts were direct from Mercedes. Mechanically, R&R built the motor, went through the injection system, rebuilt the fuel tank, went through the transmission, the differential, all the suspension, the brake system, everything from a mechanical standpoint to make it work and function and be mechanically sound, but also keep the original finish and the patina of everything.
But, in this particular job, the sort of kind of oxidized and dulled out look and everything is what, we wanted to keep. So like a lot of the plating components, a lot of the, the original parts to the car, we really couldn't do anything sort of like cosmetically because we were trying to keep it, in the look of what it was.
One thing R&R did change on the engine was upgrade to a sport cam from Mercedes, which adds another 15 to 20 horsepower to what was already a pretty fast car for the era, capable of 215 horsepower originally. Lastly, the 300 SL is a dry sump system, so it runs a separate oil tank. According to Randy, the engine runs about 12 quarts of oil, which R&R exclusively uses Penn grade oil to fill back up.
It used to be Brad Penn, and now I think it's Penn grade. We've used them pretty much exclusively. It's 2050. It's their, I think they call it a semi-synthetic, but it's the green, the green oil, which I've had great luck with. I've had no issues with that. And even more so with how bizarro the life of these things are, where they'll get pressed into regular use and then sit all winter or, things like that. I've really had no, weird wear issues or anything like that. That oil's been really good for us.
In a preservation job like the one on this 1955 300 SL Gullwing, it's impossible to keep working non-stop, but even with the strict demands to return the car to an original state, R&R got the job done in just under a year. Not long after finishing the project, Randy found out this Mercedes was accepted to the preservation class at Pebble Beach. In fact, on top of the Pebble Beach car show this past summer, the car also signed up for a 1,500-mile rally through Colorado called the 300 SL Classic. As Randy says, it's a cool car and engine to see, so for sticking around with us until the end, enjoy this short clip of the engine running. have to admit, you kind of want to spend 3 years finding your own 300 SL Gullwing now, don't you? Well, that does it for this episode of Engine of the Week. Thanks to our sponsors, Penn Grade 1, Scat Crankshafts and Elring. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have an engine that you'd like to see featured, please email me at gjones@babcocks.com. We'll see you next time.